Hello and welcome to Dave's Delightful Dishes. And as always, I'm Dave, and it is such a delight to have you here visiting me today in my kitchen. And today we have the result of a poll that's been going on amongst viewers for about the last 3 weeks to a month. And I put up some pictures of this dish that we're going to working on today, which is creamy chicken mushroom stew. And I said, what would you think would be best to have that over? And you guys responded. I got a lot of rice and noodles, but the thing that was said most often was risotto. And since I've got a great recipe that we've already shown on mushroom risotto, we're going to do that today. Let's check it out. So for something that's going to be slow cooked, well, relatively slow cooked, we're going to be cooking that on on the cooktop. I'm going to use my Dutch oven. You could certainly put this in a casserole dish once it's been. And you could use a pan and a casserole dish in the oven as well. Really kind of a preference. I love using my Dutch ovens, as you guys know, so that's what I'll be using today. And since it's a stew, that's what I think of it as. And I could also put that Dutch oven in the oven if I really needed to. But we have a whole bunch of ingredients, although it's not as many as you think. It's more just some spices. And these are here. But the thing we're going to start with is getting the chicken, which I have got 2 pounds of chicken breasts, which I've cut up into chunks. And I have flour, salt, and pepper. It is 6 tablespoons of flour, a half teaspoon each of pepper and salt. And I fresh ground the pepper. I'm going to drop that flour into this plastic bag. And if you wanted to heat this up a little bit, you could. You could put some like cayenne or something that's a little bit spicier in there if you wanted to. But I'm going to keep it kind of traditional today. I've been making a lot of hot food lately. And then your chicken has to go in too. And this is going to be just one of those shaker bags. We're going to get these completely covered. You shake it and shake it and shake it. And now your chicken is ready to get cooked. I like putting it back into this bowl because that way I don't have to get my hands quite as gross when I'm cooking over on the stovetop. So let's head on over there now. All right, so I've gotten this cast iron hot. It's on high heat right now. And I'm going to put 2 tablespoons worth of oil in this pot. There we go. And maybe a little tiny bit extra, but I want to get some good coverage. That's going to take just a second to heat up. And I'm going to take my chunks of chicken that's been floured, and this is going to go around this pot. Because we've got to brown this chicken on all 4 sides. But don't worry, we are not cooking this all the way through. This is just to brown it off for our first step. Now you're going to have to do this in batches because you don't want to overcrowd the pan. And that's just about as much as I can fit in here. There we go. So now I'm going to brown this on all sides, and I'm going to do all the chicken that we have. And once that's done, we're going to move on to the next step. So I'm going to see you back when this is browned on all sides. All right. Here's the last batch just about finishing up, and you can see it's browned all over, and we got some nice brown bits here at the bottom of the pot. So we can take these off. And I know they're not done being cooked yet, but that's fine because we got a lot more process to go here. So I have this on low heat right now while I do the transfer so I don't get a lot of smoke. And I'm putting just a little bit more oil on, like just a little drizzle there. And I have to put the 2 tablespoons of butter in. And we're going to let that go ahead and start melting. Nope, 1 piece of chicken I missed. There we go. Pull that out. That butter is going to melt up real quick. And what we're going to add is we have 2 onions diced and 1 shallot diced. And they're big, kind of chunky dices. And then 5 cloves of garlic, minced. And I have to put in a half a teaspoon of seasonal. And a teaspoon of dried thyme. Stir that all together, and we're going to let these onions soften up. This is probably going to take 3 to 4 minutes with a bunch of onions about this size. Now that these onions have softened and are starting to brown, we need to add 3 tablespoons of flour. And we got to stir all that together until it gets kind of like a thick paste and all combines. Which doesn't take very long, as you can see. And now we're going to slowly incorporate our chicken stock, which I have right here. We'll put a little bit of it in and give us a real good stir. You see that starts thickening almost immediately, so now we're going to add the rest of it. Get this to medium heat because we want this to warm up pretty quickly. And just let that sit here and come up to temperature. And there should be 0 lumps in this. Once we get this so that it's simmering a little bit, and it's this nice, even kind of sauce, instead rather than being lumpy, and I don't see any lumps in here at all, so that came out perfectly. We got to add in a 1.5 cups of milk. Stir that together. Oh, try not to spill on yourself. And I have a little bouquet of fresh thyme that I'm going to put in to add some extra flavor. I've got it tied up so it'll be easy to take back out again. And it's time to add the chicken back in as well. As well as a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of pepper, freshly cracked. And we got to stir all this. I'm going to bring this up to medium-high heat, and we're going to let this get to a simmer. And there's one final ingredient to add, which is a cup of heavy cream. Well, 2 final ingredients. The cup of heavy cream, which we'll stir together. And now, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And now we're going to let this come to a simmer uncovered. All right, we're getting some bubbling. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this back to low, and we're going to put our mushrooms, which we have about 20 of these cremini mushrooms that are thickly sliced. We're going to drop them in. And it's probably, if I had to guess, that's about 10 ounces. So it's a little bit more than a package. So if you wanted to cut it a little short and just have it one package, you don't end up with leftover mushrooms, that would be just fine. So we're going to stir these in. Let it come back to a simmer. I'm going to turn the heat up to let it come back. And you can see it's starting to simmer along the edges now. So I'm going to cut it back to kind of medium-low. And I'm going to put the lid on. And we're going to let this cook for 20 minutes. All right, it's been 20 minutes. And I've taken the lid off and stirred it a couple of times during that time. And now it's time for us to do our final stuff before we serve. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thyme bouquet out because we don't need it now. It's done what it needs to do. And now we're going to kind of stir this around and see how thick it's getting. Because we want it to be pretty thick. As you can see, it's still kind of runny. So we can add to that. I have a couple of spoonfuls of cornstarch in some water, which I've made a slurry out of. And I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit to like medium-low to get it bubbling again. And I'm going to add some of that cornstarch. And we're just going to keep on stirring for probably about 5 minutes with this cover off. And just stirring until we get this thickness that we want it to be. And you can add more or less cornstarch, or you can use flour, but I think for a final thickening, cornstarch seems to work a little better for me. There we go. That should be enough. And this is also a good time to taste the stew to see if it needs any salt, pepper, or any other seasonings before you go to final plating. So we're going to let this thicken up. I'll see you back in about 5 minutes. So it's been about 5 minutes, and as you can see, the stew is thickened up significantly. If you have a look at the bubbles, you can see how they're like clinging on, and they're almost making a full bubble on top of the soup. On the top of the stew. That gives you a pretty good idea that it's thickening up nicely. And this is a personal preference. I like mine to be about this, where it's still liquid. It's not like I'm chewing on my stew, but it's thick and it kind of clings to the spoon. And I've tasted it, and I added just a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper for my personal taste, but you can adjust that however you like. It certainly has enough thyme, and that seasonal does help a little bit too for total flavor. So now we're going to take this off the heat, and we're going to bring it over for final plating at the workstation. All right, here we go. Bare-handed, I'm bringing this on over. And I've made my risotto. I'm going to link that in the description since we've already made this on the show. And you can choose noodles, or you can choose pretty much anything you like. This would be great over potatoes as well, maybe with a side of vegetables. I'm going to have salad with this tonight, but it's still, it's kind of the sky is the limit. If you wanted to, you could add potatoes into this stew too, and that would be lovely. But I think since everybody requested most, the number one thing that was suggested was a risotto. I figured that was just about perfect. So I'm going to take a nice heaping spoonful, run it over the risotto, and cascading down. Get a bunch of nice chicken pieces in there. Perfect. And now I'm going to use my bare hands to get this out of the way a little bit. And we're going to give this a snowstorm of chopped parsley as a final garnish. And this is all over the place. And this is ever so delightful. And this is a recipe that you can do at home. This is easy. If you needed to, you could put this in a crock pot. Just remember, you want to brown the chicken before the crock pot starts. Then the rest of the stuff you put in, and you're just going to do a final thickening at the end. So you can do this quickly. This only took 40 minutes. Or you can put it in the morning and set it and forget it and have it last all day. Anyhow, I want you to try it, and I want you to tell me how you did. You can contact me either in the comments here, and you can hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And then you can check me out on my Facebook page for Dave's Delightful Dishes, which will be linked in the description, as well as my Instagram. And on my Facebook page, you're going to see my Spreadshirt app, which has all of my merch, from aprons to coffee mugs to stickers to t-shirts. We have all kinds of things, and I've got 2 designs right now and more are coming. So I'd love to have you support me by buying some of my merch, especially if it's something you might like. And please let me know what other kind of challenges, food challenges you would like me to do. Keep those comments and challenges coming in. There's a lot more coming, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the next recipe. Have a wonderful day.